Hi, John McElroy here, talking all things automotive. Let me set the stage for what you're about to see. Every year, the SAE Foundation throws a big fundraiser where they bring in hundreds of people and raise hundreds of thousands of dollars, all for STEM education. This year, the event was held at the Henry Ford Museum, and a big part of the dinner is where they give out an award to the industry leader of the year. This year, that was Jim Farley. I got a chance to sit down and talk with him about how cars are changing, about how the automotive industry is changing, why he created this new business unit called Ford Model E, and we even get into a little bit of his personal life. Take a look. So Jim, to start out with, what an amazing place that we're in here right now. So historic. We've got a DC-3 peeking over our shoulders here. And I think this is the appropriate venue to ask you about what you see going on in the industry right now, because we see so much historic change in this museum here. Some of my favorite stuff are the old 19th century steam engines that are over that way. But we're seeing an amazing change going on in the industry right now. How do you describe it to people when they ask you, or if they ask you, what the heck's going on in the auto industry right now? What do you describe?
I think 4 or 5 years ago, we thought it was going to be the electric car, but I would say the simplest way to capture the change is we're going from an analog product to a digital product. It happens to have a different propulsion system, but the real big change is that, like in 07, 08, we all use our phones to call people. And then a couple years later, we were using our phones to do different things. The trip is going to change the same, and it's because we have a digital product. So getting from here to there is going to change, just like we don't use our phones for calling. It's a digital product.
So where do you see it going? I mean, in terms of how am I going to experience the car, or anybody else in the room here are going to experience their car differently today than where you think it's going?
I think when I listen carefully to my team, and it's great to have the team here, and Doug Fields here with his wife Kathy, what I hear from them is that the vehicle, the electric and digital vehicle, will be able to be changed, and so just like the apps on your phone, your vehicle could change depending on who uses it in a family or your coworkers. Or the time of day. Maybe you have to do a team meeting or WebEx using L3 autonomy on your way to work, and so you're going to be, because it's digital, you're going to be using it as a digital device, and so it'll be customized for you, not like customized like we think of cars, physical customization. It'll be digitally switched. So like my wife would probably pick 0 to 60 in 8 seconds, but you'd rather have an extra 100 miles of range. I would like 0 to 60 in 3 seconds with super aggressive regen braking, but probably I would want, Led Zeppelin from my phone. She'd probably want it from something, streaming service. So I just think I think my team feels like we're not talking about the right thing. We're talking about the propulsion system. And we're talking about the 3 first shippable software to the car, but what's after that, like the 3rd inning of this 9-inning game, is going to be how do you customize it, because there'll be so many different ways to take a trip.
So your car gets to know you better, gets to know your lifestyle better, becomes more than just something that takes you to some place.
Correct.
Does a whole lot more for your life.
Yes, and trips will be more rewarding. You'll experience trips differently, we believe. You'll know more about on the way there. The trips will suddenly become kind of like feeds for your social media, or people will be able to be on the trip with you. It won't be a call to someone else. It'll be the trips will change, I think, a lot.
The journey will be the destination.
Yes.
I mean, it'll be as fun to go, not are we there yet kind of a thing, but oh darn, we're already there.
Correct. And actually, you think about it, the ETA becomes super important, your estimated time of when you're going to arrive somewhere, because you want to use the Blue Cruise L3 to the max because you want to make a productive time maybe, and so you actually may take a longer way to get there. But as long as the ETA is really accurate, then it won't interrupt your day. So things will change about the trip, like the accuracy of your estimated arrival will become super important in that scenario.
So where do you see all this like Blue Cruise going?
Yes.
You guys just got great accolades of having the best hands-free system that's out there. Next step is not just hands off, but eyes off. I mean, and then hopefully level 4 at some point beyond that. That's going to change. That'll have, I believe, as much impact on society as when the first horseless carriages appeared over 120 years ago.
We feel the exact same way. And originally our thinking was 5-6 years ago, level 4 would be that answer. But it actually turns out, Doug and I, when we first started talking, a few years ago, I mean, we both kind of got to the same idea, which is the level 3. When you take your eyes off the road, even if the operating domain is like sunny day on a highway, and that gets bigger over time, that's going to be a moment when the car trip totally changes. So we think we're putting all of our efforts into level 2+ and level 3 because the operating domain at level 3 may be eyes off the road, may be small at the beginning, but over time it'll get bigger and bigger. That will be a huge unlock. I remember when I left Toyota, I went to a dealership for the first time in my life, and I traded in my Prius, and my Prius was worth, it was a white Prius, and it was worth $5,000 more than a Prius without my HOV sticker. So back then, 15 years ago, people were willing to pay $5,000 to be in the HOV lane for maybe a couple minutes a day. So what will people be willing to pay if you could get 40 minutes back in your life right now?
Yeah.
A lot.
A lot, because time is the most precious resource that we've got.
So we're going to put all of our effort, and we believe, I know Doug believes this really strongly, and his team, Sammy, that there's actual differentiation. It won't be a commodity experience. The way the vehicle pulls over, if there's a problem, the way it notifies you that you need to start re-engaging to get on the off-ramp, like the way it keeps a lane and the way it's integrated into the other systems, the digital system, we think is a real differentiator for us. So we don't want to delegate that to someone else. Maybe we have to use Mobileye over time because it comes out as such a big unlock, but we want to do that in the company.
Well, you want to control the experience.
Yes.
It doesn't matter what the hardware is necessarily to get there.
Yes.
You want a Ford Motor Company experience.
Correct. And we'll install the hardware and the sensing and the electric architecture, in as many vehicles as we can, so that it just becomes a software, update for people.
And you do it by segment, so a Mustang experience is different from an F-150 one.
I think it is going to wind up being a little bit different. Like, we think, the urban situation is the most difficult, require a lot of sensors, and but I do think it won't be. What's interesting is it won't be really so much of my career. Cool technology was defined by the price of the vehicle, but actually it turns out, like music or iPhone, smartphones, it turns out actually that just because something isn't expensive doesn't mean you won't want the latest level 3 technology. So then the real question is, what does a luxury brand mean in a digital automotive product? In the past, it meant, powertrain technology, NVH, maybe some, finer details of the interior, maybe bigger wheels, But with a digital product, it fundamentally changed. It democratizes so much of that with an EV that maybe brands like Ford, can compete for all customers, not just for the ones we imagine today.
So doing all this stuff that you're talking about is not the old way that the industry did things.
No.
You're changing the way cars get conceived of, designed, engineered, manufactured, distribution. You're changing so much.
I'm super popular there. Yeah.
Right. So tell us a little bit about that. I mean, this industry is going to be very different by the end of this decade than it is right now. Paint us a little bit of a picture of where you see it all going.
Well, I think it turns out, I mean, we're like in the second inning of a 9-inning game, and so we're starting to learn more. Like it's becoming a little bit clearer. It's not as opaque as it was a few years ago, and I'm sure looking back, you know, we'll have probably made a lot of different decisions than we are right now. I think we feel that that our commercial business, in a way, telegraphs the future of our participation in the industry, and that the brand loyalty with people when the technology changes really gets mixed up. And so new brands like Tesla can be the best luxury brand in the United States because people are voting for technology, not for the history of a brand. It's more of a meritocracy. So I think what we see is a huge mix-up of the winners and losers. And a big disruption, frankly, to a lot of people's lives. And if you're a supplier or you're a dealer, you better pick the right winners and losers, because they're not all going to be the same. When we look at China, it's shocking, actually, to see 30 million unit industry. Volkswagen is 22% of ICE, and they're like 2% of EV. And they spend enough money to be 22% of EV, but they're not. So it seems like when people go digital and electric, they completely discard their brand preferences. But then when they buy, they don't switch technologies, and they probably won't switch brands. So there's this enormous mix-up that's going to happen in the next several years where the brands get reshuffled. You saw it in white goods, you saw it in personal electronics, now it's coming to our industry. I think brand will matter a lot, but you see Hyundai, Kia, you see BYD, you see new brands, not new brands, but even older companies who are really punching above their weight.
You know, when you talk about all this disruption, as you know, I really respect and admire how you've carved out this new EV entity within Ford Model E. Gets back to, if you know, the innovator's dilemma, you know, what do you do in an industry going through disruption? You're doing something very, very different there, and not many others are following. Although recently, Toyota just even announced it's going to create a whole new EV dedicated business unit within the company. What led you to decide I mean, that's a gutsy move. What gave you the confidence to go and do that?
Well, first, you know, first of all, I think it also turns out that a lot of the capabilities in the companies turns out to be super important. Like, you can't just have software people who don't know about safety critical systems to write, you know, productivity software for Ford Pro. So, and manufacturing plants are really, and supply chains are really complicated, and a lot of the components are still the stuff that we need, like seats and IP. So actually, it turns out that you can't just get rid of everyone and start over again. You know, the people at Ford are really valuable, but you definitely need new skills. I think, honestly, this one, I've really never said that, it's very personal for me. Because I saw my team struggling, and I saw great new people like Doug and great existing engineers like Jim Bombeck. And I watched the organization, okay, I'll make it more personal. When we did Team Edison, Ted's here, it was a kind of maverick group in the company that did our first generation products. We would not be number 2 in the US without Team Edison. And I watched, and then I kind of got invited to go to the new side of the business. And so I watched my team that I loved so much, who did the Lightning, who did the Mach-E, who did the E-Transit, and I saw them like be moved into the basement of PDC and be treated differently. Like that was a moment as a leader when I could look from a distance and say, holy crap, they're going to ruin this team. And then I saw the new people coming, and I want them to grow and have the impact they want. And so I started to think pretty early on, maybe 2 years ago, oh my God, I think we're going to have to manage this differently than asking everyone to do everything. Because it turns out that everyone wants to work on the future. But some people actually don't know what good looks like in the future. So if everyone wants to work on the future and you don't have focus, you don't have accountability, and also you start to water down because you got to compete with, like I think of Tesla as like a 300 kilometer per hour Shinkansen that ripped through Dearborn. And I'm like in a little hand crank behind it. And I was like, I saw what happened to Team Edison. I was like, no, we have to build the Shinkansen. We have to catch up. And I didn't think we could do it. We can't crank it fast enough. And then I checked with my team. Like I knew enough that it can't be Jim Farley's idea. So we got our team together, the people I really trust, who understood the company, and I said, hey, am I crazy? Am I crazy? And they're like, yeah, maybe. But then they're like, no, I understand. But then the hard part was like, how does everyone work with each other? Because there's still a lot of interdependencies. And that I think that's still playing out today. I don't know, team, if we have it right. But we're working that out, right? Yeah.
Well, you got it. It's a learning process. I mean, this is stuff that nobody's done before.
Yeah.
It's the old Chinese saying, we're going to cross the river by feeling the rocks with our feet.
There you go.
And that's what you're doing right now.
Yes.
But let's talk a little bit about you here. We're in a time constraint, but what do you do to get away from it all? I mean, everybody needs, to step away from work, get their mind on something else, like the sorbet between courses on a fancy meal. What's your sorbet?
I mean, I think I'm a car person. Like, I'm one of the simplest people you ever meet, You
love to race.
I love racing. Last weekend, I did a hare scramble in western Michigan on my KTM in the woods with 15 other nutballs, through the woods. I like to compete, and I still love cars and motorcycles, and so if I have my perfect day, I would like to go out and race, or I would like to ride in the woods in a motorcycle. I still feel like, I love being with a machine, and I love working on it and making it better, and especially like racing is cool because you have a whole team to work with, and the driver plays a role, but it's just beginning. And then when you're at the track, of course, there's a person who's like, my Super Duty is broken, and Mr. Farley, why don't you? So it's actually cool because I never get disconnected. I'm not in an isolation ward. I'm still in the car business. I like that. I guess for me, like most people, it's just my family. My two daughters, my wife Leah, and my son. And we're like a normal family, so they pretty much don't care that I'm got a fancy title. They just want dinner or do some wash, and I need them to do more homework. And so I think it's going to sound crazy, but my favorite part of my day is throwing a softball with my 13-year-old daughter.
That's great. Jim, as I said, we're under a time constraint. We could go a lot longer with this, and I'd love to, but the show must go on. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, Jim Farley,
Thank you.
Industry Leader of the Year.
Thank you.
Good job.